creativity.
You're welcome back to Business Morning. We're glad you're still there. We've been talking about growing SMEs in Nigeria, on the continent in Africa, and how can we increase the capacity of small and business owners to be able to meet with international standards and roll out enough for exports. And our guest has been Fayo Williams, a woman entrepreneur and of course the CEO at Rely Supply Limited. Thank you, Fayo, for still being a part of the program.
You're welcome.
I just talked about the issue of products and services, and I think that according to research, services is one of the areas in which an economy can grow. We've seen services in Nigeria. We've seen what's going on with the telecom sector. We've seen how the provision of services is increasing the growth of the GDP and the capacity of the economy to expand. So how can SMEs improve on service delivery, or what areas of services can they be involved in to be able to meet up with the requirement and the demands out there?
All right. It's pretty broad, in terms of what areas they could play in, because it's now a knowledge economy, right from the ICT to education to, like I said before, logistics to even subcontracting to consulting. There is a wide range of services the SMEs could play in. And this would depend on, of course, the training, background, and the passion of the promoter, of the business. But I would like to say we need to encourage personal development, acquiring new skills, and being able to, really be customer focused. Because right now, there's a lot being said, even at the WEDF, about marketing and branding. Creating your brand, adding value, and being able to put it forward to the world. So in line with this, like the NECA's Network of Entrepreneurial Women, of which I'm first vice president, they're coming up with a summit on the 30th of October, where they will be telling women how to become the catalyst for change, for innovation. Many a times we really need to think outside the box. I was very happy to read about some young women who are looking at common tomato and pepper now, either turning it into powder or putting it into sachets, so that you and I as housewives, we can have an easier ride instead of wearing those rain boots in those deep markets to get them out. So we are saying right now that even in terms of curriculum, in terms of catching them young, we could address teenagers and encourage them to develop the entrepreneurial mindset. We could put things like generating a business idea in the curriculum at secondary school, at universities, so that already the average school leaver isn't coming out to look for a white-collar job anymore, but to find out how he or she can add value, identify the gap, and play in it. So services, for instance, are even a bit simpler and sometimes, let me put sometimes quote, a little less expensive to start off than a manufacturing plant, for instance. So we should encourage more SMEs to look at services that would help, existing organizations to even perform better at what they do. There's a lot of outsourcing going on right now, and these are the kind of things that we should be looking at.
I'd like us to talk about the issue of partnership, and this was actually a key area that was pointed out at the World Export Development Forum by the International Trade Center, and it said that partnership between policymakers and businesses should be strengthened between international development partners and local government, heads, between global private sectors, and also African SMEs. So how do we strengthen partnership?
We must strengthen partnerships, and we can do this by identifying all the stakeholders and then bringing up the issues. You will be surprised how easily, challenges can be resolved. I remember being privileged to be at a forum at the Nigerian Employers Consultative Association, where we had the Minister for Trade and we had the captains of industry in the same room. And those barriers were being brought up. It was literally like phone calls were being made, people were being directed. There was a an increase in knowledge, even on the part of the government functionary, seeing things from the point of view of the private sector. So we need to have a lot more of that happening. Right now in Rwanda, there is an agency, One UN, and they are doing amazing things. Right there, they have this, Rwanda has set up this special economic zone where you have about 22 industries, you have Wi-Fi, you have tarred roads, you have electricity, you have even
like
land titling.
Like an incubation center?
Yes. No, it's an economic zone. It's like for huge industries. An incubation center, we would refer more for SMEs.
For startups,
yes,
small
for startups.
businesses?
Yes.
I think we're beginning to look at that in Nigeria.
Look at that.
In relation to the IT now,
IT,
we've
yes,
seen
there's a
the
lot
Minister
going on.
of Communications and Technology
yes, that's right.
trying to do something
set up
about
something like that in
like,
the IT
like
sector.
incubation center to grow the small businesses and
That's
you know
right. Even
encourage
Smedon,
them.
Even Smedon has some incubation centers, but we must take them as incubators. So after some time, those organizations need to move so that some of the younger ones need to come in. Yes, a lot can be done if there are partnerships and alliances, because the private sector would always let you know where the shoe pinches. You know, government at times, you may be a little bit removed from what's going on. And you know, we need to relate this to global competitiveness index. And in some areas, we're not doing so well, you know. So when it comes to things like ease of registering a business, the process of land titling and the speed, you know, we need to check on how we're doing with these indicators. Because it's not enough to just say, oh, foreign direct investment, we want people to come in. We must make it easy for them to come in, set up shop, operate, you know, and we need to get something, you know, getting some value from them for our own people. And they, as stakeholders, also need to be able to get value for themselves. That is what would encourage them to stay.
At the beginning of this conversation, we're wrapping up soon, you talked about the challenge of access
To
funding and the 220 billion naira that is there, and it sounds so huge. Now the issue is what it sounds like. It sounds huge.
Sounds
a whole lot
but
that need to be done with a little amount of money. But how should we make it easy for the small business owners to have access to them without much collateral?
Exactly.
I've heard about the central bank actually releasing a framework to allow small business owners to come to borrow money without collateral. You can bring your television sets, your radio, and all of, you know, personal items like that.
Those movable assets?
Yeah, movable asset to allow you access to small amounts of money to do your business.
Well, I would like to first congratulate the Central Bank of Nigeria. I think they have done a great job. This time around, we have really comprehensive guidelines, and the structure is such that, you know, the state governments can tap into this, the participating financial institutions, the PFIs, the microfinance, the commercial banks, and so on. But a lot of guidelines have been put in for these sets of people. But for the borrower, it's a bit hazy. I must say it looks a bit hazy, because many, you know, banks are bound to flavor this guideline with their own policies and procedures. So what I'd like to say is that there should be guidelines. If you're just needing a 50,000 or 100,000, let us have the guidelines for being able to access that.
Should for certain amounts of money?
For
certain
categories of the money. You may just be a member of a cooperative. And in cooperative, you know, each one trusts one. You know, somebody would recommend you. They know your house, they know your family, and they can watch you. They can, you know, watch you as you take the money. But in commercial banks, even though we know it's other people's money that has to be returned, we need to be a bit more creative. The commercial bank could decide to pay suppliers or vendors off the SME. We've seen funds like Growfin do that. You know, they don't give you the money direct. They say, oh, you want to trade? Where is your supplier? What's his bank account? What is he bringing in? Let's check that he has delivered, and then we pay. So we need to be more creative in order to get money to the hands of the people who need it.
All right, thank you. That's how much time we can give to this very interesting conversation. Fayo Williams, we thank you for coming on the program. CEO, Rely Supply Limited, and a woman entrepreneur, giving us some very wonderful stories and incisive conversation there with her in terms of how not just the women now, but everyone can be part of what's going on in the very objectives of growing SMEs in Nigeria, in Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa, and the word over how you can tap into the opportunities in terms of access to funding and what can be done by our government to make it easier for businesses to thrive here in the country. And that'll be all we can bring your way on Business Morning. Thank you very much for also being a part of the program. We do appreciate it. I am Bolaji Akinwale.